Welcome into Shoot the Gap, the IDP podcast for the Fantasy and Frames Podcast Network. I'm your host, Nate Markham. Joining me, as always, the best in the business, Jorge. How are you, my friend?
Man, I'm doing all right. It's funny. I remember if we were talking about this on air or off the air last week, but defensive back, man, this is like a tricky position for us to discuss. And then just because, the depth of the position and whatnot, or the scarcity, I should say, at DB, depending on how you look at it. But folks, you should be excited for tonight's show because we got some great topics, great players to talk about that could potentially be helping you in IDP this year, especially for those that play in leagues that have a cornerback dedicated position. So I'm excited for tonight's show to answer your question.
Well, good. I don't even have to introduce the other two, but I will. Mike Wohlert. Mike, good to see you again, as always, my friend. No hornet stinging you, it appears, at the current moment, and no MFL roster designations to upset you, it doesn't appear. Other than those two things, how are we living?
Those already beat me down, so...
Okay, so
I'm
choose one. 2 hornet stings to the leg, or exclusive drafting with only MFL roster player, position designations.
Too soon, Nate. Too soon.
Oh my God. It's a tricky one. I don't know. They both sting really bad. Are both a bitch.
They both are a bitch.
But from with the hornet stings.
Yeah. Okay.
The stings will go away. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Hollywood
bomb on it.
Rosters last forever.
Hollywood is so choked up over tonight's episode. It brings a tear to my eye. It brings a little bit of seepage from the poison ivy. Luckily, the talk is as contagious as poison ivy will be. And like Jorge alluded to and stole my thunder, Jorge, you're still the co-host. Remember that. It is draft fallout. We have covered the last 2 weeks at 2 other positions on IDP, the defensive line, edge rush, as well as linebackers. This week, the defensive back position, I guess Kerry is choosing the MFL roster designations. Good job, Kerry. Way to get involved with the MFL side of things. She does play on MFL through the Scott Fish Bowl, so is aware, which is good. Very knowledgeable.
She's selected every year before you are, if memory serves.
She's not in it yet this year. So
really,
I know. Yep. Scott is. The wave is coming tomorrow. Hopefully it happens, and she can get her. Hopefully that's for Tom Everett Scott to get his redemption, who is still on the outside looking in from who's better competition. So we'll have to mention TES and get him back into our good graces and make sure he knows that he technically kind of owes us a signed picture from a thing you do because she finished ahead of him. I digress. Let's talk about defensive backs. Guys, as we know, in most formats, and I guess we'll ask each one, do you play in any leagues where cornerbacks actually have IDP relevance, Mike?
Yeah. Either based on specific scoring or the actual CB, playing the actual CB position.
Yeah. It's not, I mean, it's rare. Some have benefits where they actually reward corners for, say, pass defense. Jorge, I would ask you, how does the new Fantasy and Frames IDP scoring, by the way, in case people are new now listening, we have our own scoring rubric that we're extremely happy to announce and to hope gain some traction. The guys at actually, you tell us a little bit about that, Jorge. Jump on in. You're the expert.
Yeah, so we went through all the major sites scoring rubrics. We thought, let's add a metric here, let's decrease the value of a play there, just because of just how our logic was taking hold. And we decided, you know what, one of the drawbacks I think, and then people can debate me on this, of IDP is that there isn't a lot of uniformity when it comes to scoring. We kind of make some of the content creation a little bit more uniform, a little bit more easy to kind of rally behind, but that's just my take, and people have obviously different opinions. But as such, I thought let's create a scoring setting that would kind of help to make all the different IDP positions somewhat comparable, so that it's not just all the linebackers that have all the value, or it's not just defensive linemen and defensive backs that are suffering. Everybody has a fair shake at getting you good fantasy points from week to week, and that's where the idea of coming up with the FIF IDP scoring came from. And if I could piggyback off of this just a little bit, Nate, we announced this week. I probably should have let you answer before I made that a rhetorical question. Sorry. We announced yesterday our 4-Eye Championship charity tournament that we have every year is going to be a best ball offense and IDP tournament this year, which we will be using our FIF IDP scoring rubric for your IDP position.
I think that's excellent news. I mean, what do you guys prefer? Have you played in an IDP best ball?
Stole the scoring from me. So that's why you wanted my projection sheets. No, I'm kidding, by the way. Fully kidding.
Not even close, but I appreciate your
That's Alex, who's not getting invited into the tournament this year. You will not have one of those fancy belts over your shoulder like Ryan does every time that I'm on with Club Fantasy, just taunting us at how he has, defeated pretty much all of us because he won the inaugural season. Let's talk a little bit about defensive backs because they are a vital and valuable position, especially in FIF scoring. We'll go pretty much just as the players were picked in the most recent draft, and we'll get a little bit of analysis from not just an IDP standpoint, but sometimes a real football standpoint, and see if that will parlay into actual IDP success. But before we do, there actually is a little bit of news. James Bradberry, who obviously we knew wanted out of New York, signs with Philly. Does anybody have any, I'd say, IDP lean towards James Bradberry this year?
If you're streaming corners and if he doesn't get drafted, just play him twice a year against the Giants, because he's going to get like multiple interceptions against the Giants. He's going to be the definition of a revenge game. He will want revenge. I don't know what New York was thinking with him. I mean, he's a good corner, so I'm playing him at least twice against the Giants.
Well, they needed to move him. From what I understood, even before the draft, they barely had cap space to sign all their draft picks, and I thought maybe they would convince a team to even give them something, even if they had to move a fifth or a sixth just to unload his salary. But I'm far from an expert when it comes to that. All I do is read Spot Track and piggyback off that. Piggybacking off good news for James Bradberry and his big payday. Tariq Cohen, the poor guy can't catch a break, tears his Achilles. Did you guys read his little story, or not little story, but his just heartbreaking story about his life?
No, I didn't.
Take 5-10 minutes and read. He wrote like a little, I don't want to call it a manifesto because that has negative connotations with everything that's happened in the world lately. But his life has been anything short of roses and daisies. It's been just constant heartache after heartache with the loss of his brother. And he's had two brothers that have both had, just horrible outcomes. He blamed himself a lot for not getting them out of the inner city and into Chicago. And he signed his signing bonus, and then he tears his ACL and MCL, doesn't recover as well. Now the Achilles, it's take a little bit. It makes you appreciate him as a human being, and you wish the best for him. I wish him quick return. Who's not returning to my Kansas City Chiefs is Melvin Ingram. He signed with the Miami Dolphins. Hollywood, how do you feel about the landing spot for Ingram?
I like it a little better, I guess. I don't think it changes a whole lot. Going to have, with the Jets and the Patriots having second-year quarterbacks, that's going to be a little bit to his advantage over the AFC, right? Because you got all those veteran QBs. So, and those two teams are not as good as the AFC West. So yeah, I mean, you're facing those two twice a year, so that's 4 games right there. So I don't think it does a whole lot for his overall fantasy because I think he's on the very end of his career. So not somebody I'm starting. I don't think maybe a depth piece at best.
Yeah,
in a super deep league or something like that, but not somebody I'm relying on.
All right. I can see a rotation a little bit, especially you don't want to have him take snaps from Jalen Phillips and, another KC cast off now, Emmanuel Agba and Melvin Ingram. Granted, Ingram was only with KC for a year, probably not quite the same. Person who's back with the same is Jair Alexander, signs back with the Packers for $84 million for 4 years. Again, IDP guys, we know the Jair Alexander at corner, not necessarily going to move the needle too much, but it's good for the Packers as a whole. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers just loves seeing him shell out more money for his defense since they didn't do much for his offense. I digress. We can jump right in to the actual draft. As we've been talking about, defense was paramount to start this draft, and it went to at picks 3 and 4. Houston and the Jets both took corners, Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner. Did you guys expect it to go that direction with all the hype of Sauce Gardner going into the draft? Did you think he was going to leapfrog Stingley, Mike, Jorge, Hollywood?
I didn't.
I thought all those guys were going to probably be pretty close to one another.
Yep.
Anyway, go ahead, Jorge.
I was just shocked at how early in the draft these guys were taken. I could have swore every single mock heading into the draft this past month was all edge defensive lineman heavy, and so to see these guys go pretty early on, it definitely eye-opening. But in terms of how they were clustered together, not surprising.
Yeah, well, we kind of seen this last year, right? Saints and them guys trying to move up to get corners. There was 3 or 4 corners that went inside the top 10. And I kind of thought maybe that's where you would see. And then I got to study and I was like, this is your best 2 corners in this class. Teams that are after corners are going to push for them. So I knew they would be a couple spots together or right together. So that, like Jorge said, that didn't surprise me. But I was kind of surprised to see them both go inside the top 4. I just didn't think Houston would do that. I thought they would go pass rusher, and I changed my pick at the last minute because listening to some local radio in Houston, and the intriguing thing was if Lovie Smith had a lot of say, then he would be going corner because everywhere he's ever been, college, pro, he's had a shutdown corner in his cover 2 scheme. He needs that. So with that, I was like, that kind of makes sense. There's a few more pass rushers in this class than corners, so that's why I changed my pick like just days before the draft. And I was like, okay, we'll do this. But I did have Gardner going to the Jets because they had to have a corner.
Well, you got like the first 5 picks right, didn't you?
It was first 7.
First 7. Look at you. What a stud. Yeah. What a stud. And speaking of studs, that's Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner, both studs. But honestly, different trajectories. Stingley had that crazy, incredible freshman season and then kind of, I don't say regressed, but had injuries, between sophomore and junior year. And on the flip side, Sauce Gardner had a good freshman year and sophomore year, but that junior year really, stood out. And do either of these guys move the needle IDP-wise for either of you guys?
Well, I think what you're going to want to look for is snaps. And if these guys get on the field, then yes, they're probably going to have some sort of relevance. Patrick Surtain was a top 10 pick. He played 900 snaps and was thrown at 85 times. And I believe he was, probably ended up being more of a CB2. And I don't think really draft position is going to really matter for these guys in terms of the snaps. So, Eric Stokes, I think he was barely a first rounder. He played 988 snaps. Nate Hobbs played 894. Tyson Campbell, 864. Paulson Adebo, 851. So I think the key for all these guys are going to be snaps. And that's what will make them IDP relevant. So with everything, follow the snaps, and the guys are going to get on the field.
Yeah. Jorge, Mike, or Hollywood, anything to add to that?
Well, just to piggyback off Mike, following the snaps, but if you're looking long term, if these guys are good as expected, they're not going to be really good fantasy options. So I think, like Mike said, follow the snaps. If they're getting on the field early and getting those snaps, that's the time you want to play them. I mean, that's because I think if you get year 1, year 2 after that, if they're that good, then those targets are going to come way down.
You look at
see that'll be interesting to see just because of the gunslinger mentality of so many quarterbacks now, and with receivers being put into different positions and corners moving around, and I think quarterbacks are just taking more chances. They're throwing the ball a little bit more. I don't think really we'll see like a Darrelle Revis where he just where the quarterback just doesn't throw that way anymore. I think quarterbacks are like, screw it, I'm throwing to my guy, and whatever happens.
Yeah, it'll be matchup based a lot.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was just going to say, Mike hit it right on the head. Like, let's go back to Pat Surtain over in Denver. Like, his missed tackle rate was slightly higher than his total tackle rates, but he got 14 passes defense last year. So it's one of those things where, and also to piggyback up what Hollywood just said, especially for Dynasty, go after these young guys first at corner. I mean, like, if they're going to get the snaps, they're going to get the opportunity. Enjoy it while it lasts now, because they may not hold too much value going forward if it's not what Mike is saying and the teams shy away from going after these guys. But it'll be interesting to see. The snaps definitely obviously play the most important role here, because if they're not on the field a lot, then you're not really getting any value out of them, are you?
Right.
You're not the best color man / co-host in the business for anything, Jorge. Dynamite analysis.
You got to be on the field to get points. I know, it's crazy.
Yep, points to translate.
That's the analysis of Booger McFarland.
Exactly. We just need to get Jorge on one of his little motorized.
In order to get
things.
the opportunities to make plays on the ball, you have to be on the field.
Exactly.
When you're on the field, that means you're on the field. You're listening to the play count, and you're able to get to the ball.
I wish I had the ability or the knowledge to go in and change Jorge's tag underneath. I would change it to Booger, but I don't. So you're still going to be Jorge, and the Baltimore Ravens are going to be the Baltimore Ravens and just absolutely steal drafts somehow. Everything's going to fall in their lap. Ozzie Newsome is still just – I know he might not be making the picks as much as used to be, but his involvement and his ability to snag players like Kyle Hamilton at 114 just is – it's incredible. Now, granted, the path to snaps could be muddied a little bit. We don't exactly know. We think that the talent is going to get him on the field. New defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald has worn a couple different hats, from linebacker coach with the Ravens. I think a Swiss Army knife approach, Hollywood, is probably going to be what we can expect to see. Would you agree with that with Kyle Hamilton his first year?
Yeah. I really think they're going to play him at free safety. They're going to line him up right beside Chuck Clark. But yeah, I could see him being a little bit of everything, coming down in the box, maybe slipping out to corner if they need him to. He'll wear a lot of different hats for him and or for them, because he is so talented. He is so good. I mean, with everything that he can do, I think the draft capital is going to get him on the field too. Now, I know that's not everything, but when you're drafting a player inside the top 15, you're not drafting him to be a bench player, right? So They're definitely going to give him a shot to get out there and see what he can do. And I think it's a win-win for him. I mean, it's their kind of player, fits what they want to do, gives them an option to do multiple things, right? That's something they've not had in a while. So, I like it there.
Jorge, little twist on him. Didn't have you set up for this, but do you think that there's a chance that he eats into a little bit of Patrick Queen's production, or at least snaps, with their willingness to maybe take Patrick Queen off the field if he keeps missing tackles?
Ooh, that's a great question. Yes, that could definitely happen. I think the bigger question, though, is is Eric DaCosta, the GM there, and and Harbaugh going to be so quick to give up on the Patrick Queen experience so early into his career? I think that probably won't happen. But if his play, look, who was it that it was Bynes that took over for Patrick Queen? I think last year at a certain point in the season. I could be mistaken on the name. Doesn't matter about the name. The name is it was a backup player who took over Patrick Queen for a good chunk of the season last year at inside. So if his play continues to not, pay dividends, here we go. Another example of Booger McFarland analysis. If he just is not playing good, he's just not going to get the opportunity to get you points on the field. Yeah. Again, I'm 2 for 2, man.
I gotta tell you, if you're just now tuning in and you hear that, there's more to come. I promise you. But as we dig into a deeper question, now we're gonna flip this on a dynasty aspect, Mike. We have to look going forward. Hollywood, you mentioned that he's gonna slide in with Chuck Clark. No mention of Marcus Williams. So I don't know if that means that you think that he just will unseat Marcus Williams. But Chuck Clark is a free agent in 2024. So he's got another year or so left. But we talked about this in the pregame just a little bit, Mike. How high up are you pushing Kyle Hamilton in dynasty formats for defensive back?
So Marcus Williams will probably play that traditional deep role, I would imagine. I don't see. I know there's rumors and just news of Chuck Clark being traded, but to me, Harbaugh doesn't seem like a guy that moves on from his veterans, and especially one who's calling the plays, which is a very important role, one that he knows. And I know some of we all say, oh well, you can just have this guy call the plays. I'm like, I don't know if it's really that simple, because you got to be smart, you got to be able to call the plays, you got to be able to make changes, you got to make changes on the fly, and you got to be able to communicate. Right. Kyle Hamilton could be a great player. Can he communicate with his players? I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not him, and that's fine. Not everybody is can shout or can rally, and that's fine. He's a good football player. He makes plays, he gets hits, gets interceptions. He might be vocal about being able to make plays, but it's a completely different animal when you're the one calling the plays and you got 13 seconds to hear the plays and relay the plays onto the field before that microphone gets cut out. So I don't think that Harbaugh's going to be I don't think he's going to be too quick to want to trade someone with that status. And for all intents and purposes, I'm sure he's a pretty good locker room guy. So you still don't want that. Right. You don't still want to shove that aside. So I think you'll see Hamilton used on some 3 safety sets. They'll probably utilize that a little bit more. But as far as Clark goes, I think they'll probably play out his contract, and then that's probably when you might see really Hamilton really able to shine. In terms of dynasty, I'll have him as my top DB, but am I going to reach for him in that late first, early second, where I'm seeing him go? Probably not. Mm-hmm. I think the price is just a little bit too expensive on him, where I'm seeing him go in rookie drafts for a little bit of uncertainty for those first few years, and then potentially that potential could come down in maybe his second or third year. If he was going in those third, fourth round of your rookie draft, that would be fine. But if I'm spending a second round pick on an IDP, that dude better be hitting the field immediately, and I better know what I'm getting right away. So I don't think you want to stash your first round pick on your taxi squad.
Right.
I think he's going to see the snap. I think he's going to see the field. I think I had him projected around 800 snaps, which I think is pretty fair. He'll get his fair share. I think he can get a fair share of tackles. He should get a couple of turnovers, but I'm really, again, trying to temper expectations on some of these rookies, and not just go freaking overboard and say, yeah, Hamilton's going to play 1,000 snaps and he's going to get 120 tackles in his first year. Could it happen? Sure, but not with the way sometimes these safeties are being played. And if he's a multifaceted safety, if you have 3 positions, you may not have one. So that kind of limits his tackle upside, or it could limit some of his scoring upside. So That's kind of the way I see it. He'll probably be still a good dynasty DB. But for his price, for me, in the words of Shark Tank, I'm probably out on his price.
What do you think that price is? Because I've been tracking drafts like I do every year, actual drafts, and if probably 10 or 12 already in, and it's astounding where he's going.
So is he going top 15 overall among offense and defense?
Or are you just tracking defense?
Oh, no, I'm tracking.
So really,
it's offense, defensive. It's offense and defensive rookie drafts.
In a couple of things, he's been a top 15 player, and I'm not paying that.
He's going at an average of 18.9 right now.
I can't pay. I don't know. I don't know why.
I have seen him in a couple of these drafts that was sent to me. There was a couple. He was the first IDP off the board.
Gee.
A lot will happen between now and, of course, the same time next year when we're talking. You're going to look back and there's just a good chance that people are saying, "Can you believe Kyle Hamilton was drafted as high as he is?" And there's just a likewise, if you ask me, if the snaps open up, that people go, "We're looking at the next defensive back stud if he's utilized the way that his skill set does." Mm-hmm. The next two guys picked, at the 21st pick, the Chiefs moved up to take Trent McDuffie, an obvious area of need for that team, and Buffalo took at 23 Kaiir Elam out of Florida. Jorge, I know we're kind of feeling like we're beating a dead horse here, but at corner, both of these rookies, if you ask me, look like they should see significant snaps in their rookie year. McDuffie might be more in a nickel role, but Elam should start opposite Tre'Davious White. Do you see either as being a sneaky, maybe week-to-week defensive back play?
It's funny. We were talking about this a little bit earlier in the episode. We were talking about long-term versus short-term investment in players, and that maybe early on you can take advantage of their rookie status, but they may be phased out of IDP relevance depending on how good they play. And these guys kind of go in opposite directions for me when I look at their range of outcomes here. Let's go with Trent McDuffie first. First round pick for the Chiefs. You mentioned it, slotted to be the nickel back. Played in college zone 64% of the time. He was 6th in the Pac-12 in yards per reception, 4th in yards after the catch. He really was good if you were looking at an NFL passer rating. He was allowing a 58.9. His missed tackle rate was, a little bit high, but that's to be expected. He's somebody who I could see transitioning into a player that for IDP relevance could fade pretty quickly. I think he's actually a really good cover cornerback. And then you look at the quarterbacks and the offenses in that division with Herbert and Wilson and Carr with all their offensive weapons. He could be tested often, but I think they may be shying away from him to a certain degree. Elam, on the other hand, I don't really know what the Bills were thinking here, because when we're talking about coverage, first of all, he's like his PFF grades were just you want to talk about like F pluses, F minuses, like they were not great. But of course, like you mentioned, he slotted to line up opposite Tre'Davious White. Amongst cornerbacks, he was the 19th best in yards per reception. Not great. When targeted, when actually had the ball thrown to him, he was only allowing a completion percentage of 27.3%, which very good. In 2020, he was number 1 in the SEC in passes defense with 11. He only had 5 last year. So kind of disappointing senior season. I see him staying on the field on your IDP rosters, so to speak, longer than I do McDuffie. So to round out where your question is going, yes, there is some IDP relevance there for both early on, but I actually see Elam, if he's actually even able to stay on the field long enough over the course of the next few seasons, which you would hope with a first round pick selection there. I see Elam being the more targeted cornerback there that could potentially give you some IDP relevance for your cornerback position.
Gotcha. And up until that point, like we said, we've really seen pretty much just one true safety taken. But the end of round 1 really touched on us IDP, or tugged on our IDP heartstrings, with the 31st and the 32nd pick being Daxton Hill to the Bengals, Hollywood, and Lewis Seen to sorry, if you were not listening last year or last week, we joked around with Hollywood. So of course I like to err on the side of caution here. But Lewis Cine to the Minnesota Vikings. Jorge, let me start with Daxton Hill, who I got to tell you, I love. There was a lot of talks about him potentially moving up into, the area where the Chiefs were going to be going, which is right around here. 3 years. I mean, he started 32 games with Michigan. I got my little Michigan visor on. Not that I'm a Michigan fan necessarily, but watching him play last year, he was able to play everywhere. I mean, a lot of snaps in the slot in 2021. Is there IDP value going into this season? We know how good the Bengals are when at safety, but we talked earlier, Jesse Bates doesn't want to sign his franchise tender. Number one, I guess you can speculate on if you think Jesse Bates will actually sign, but then two, what type of role do you think you see with Daxton Hill this year?
Hey, well, Jesse Bates better sign his franchise tender because if Dax Hill gets on the field, I don't see him coming off. I think Dax, what he did at Michigan was tremendous. Rated out as the sixth best safety and coverage. Only allowed 5.6 yards per reception. That's crazy. That's crazy for somebody who plays, the free safety role there. Over the course of his collegiate career, he had a great solo to assisted tackle ratio. So this guy, he plays the coverage position well at the safety position. He could easily slide into free safety. He'll take his lumps early on, but from all his metrics, I mean, he's looking like somebody that could stay on the field for your IDP teams and for the Bengals going forward if Jesse Bates does in fact not sign his tender. I would like him to be somebody who he takes a year to kind of like learn under Bates's wing or a few seasons for that to happen. Mm-hmm. But just a great prospect and great dynasty stash, not stash, but pick, and somebody that could potentially give you some IDP relevance this year if he's thrown into the starting role.
Yeah, he is he was a 5-star recruit, bounced back and forth between choices of going to Alabama or Michigan. He's the brother of Justice Hill, running back for the Baltimore Ravens, in case you guys didn't know that. I like to add in little nuggets of knowledge for everybody as we move along. It's a learning program also, just like that. Like we go from Booger to Alex Trebek. No, rest in peace. Sorry. I get the idea. Hey, Mike, I'm going to give you a follow-up question to Kyle Hamilton. Mm-hmm. Remember, Kyle Hamilton, we know, is probably going to be the most hyped-up safety, but will Lewis Cine, the 32nd pick in this year's draft to the Minnesota Vikings, outproduce Kyle Hamilton in 2022?
I don't think so. I mean, he's slated for a free safety role. Last year in Georgia, 534 deep snaps. And then when you look at his collegiate career, he's got 2 career interceptions. He had 9 defended passes last year, which isn't horrible. 73 tackles, and I don't see production for IDP. He's good at. He could read breaks. He's a really good tackler. Won't miss tackles, but change on a dime. But I mean, like I said, where is that kind of the production, I guess, if you will? 60 targets last year. I think only allowed 38 receptions, but only 1 interception. 9 defended passes, so made a play on the ball. I guess you could say on a decent rate, but I don't know. I don't see the production, especially if he's going to be playing deep. So he's probably not someone on my radar. I hope I'm wrong. I probably will be wrong. But I don't see it right now, especially this year for production. I don't.
So would you rather have Hamilton at the 18.9, or would you rather have Cine at 37.1?
I mean, if I was going to make a choice, I would take Hamilton. I'm just not. Cine won't be. He won't be someone right. I even draft, even You know, if he somehow is and maybe makes it to the 5th or 6th round, I don't know, but he's probably not someone I'm drafting.
Yeah, the hardest thing to do is to take last year's production from a player, i.e. Xavier Woods, and say, okay, is he going to fill in those 750 free safety snaps that we saw out of Woods? Is he going to play the full complement of snaps? And can he replicate what Woods did last year? Now, I'm not expecting him to have 108 tackles, 10 passes defense, 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, because he necessarily didn't show that production at Georgia, but he did lead of all their secondary. He led in PFF's coverage grade. He was their number 1 run stopper amongst their secondary. Like you mentioned, the 8% missed tackle rate tells me he has the skill set to make an impact on the field. But you do allude to one point that's true. And from defensive back drafting an IDP, if you have a person who's slated to play, 85% of the snaps deep, most likely the pathway is not as clear to get the production.
So for a safety, you probably, you want him on the field. If he can see 800 snaps, that's probably considered a pretty good volume. I mean, that's pretty DB1, DB2. So he had 822 snaps with Georgia, and again, 73 tackles is fine, but if that's where he's going to, if that's going to kind of be, is that going to be, I don't know if that is that going to be his ceiling. I don't know. I mean, it's a decent tackle rate for a defensive back. But if that's kind of if he's going to fall into that 800 to 850 snap range, and and you figure in maybe a 9.5% tackle rate, maybe 10, and that may be generous considering some of the deeper snaps. And if he's not gonna provide some of those extra big plays to supplement maybe the 70-75 tackle, I don't know. That's gonna be tough to project.
Yeah, and one added little thing. This is not me. I'm optimistic for seeing. I think there's a little bit of pessimism in the fact that there's only so many tackles to go around, and you add in, you have Hicks, you have Eric, you have both Zedarius and Donnell Hunter. You have so many amazing pieces around that he's not just going to be able to absorb all of Xavier Woods' role, I don't think. But I am optimistic. I mean, I'm trying never to be pessimistic towards any of this, but it's something to pay attention to. And in Hollywood, that's an interesting point. I think I would probably rather have taken Kyle Hamilton just because I see the pathway to success, to a DB1, finish. And I mean, maybe
Hamilton's got the higher floor too, right?
Yeah.
Much higher floor than those guys. So, and his ceiling, if you've got that high floor, his ceiling is potentially very high. If he can, like we said, if he can get it together and get on the field, then there's a lot to like there. So I was just curious what Mike's thought was, because he said, well, I'm not taking Hamilton that high, but based on the drafts, I'm seeing that 37 is where Scene's going, and he's the second safety off the board in these drafts. So,
well, maybe
I guess one of the guys I'll be talking about in a little bit, I'll be curious. I'm going to ask you where he's going.
Any player, ask away.
No, but I'll get to him when it's kind of my turn for the player, because the player that I'll maybe talk about here shortly is probably the one I'm focusing on. So I'll be interested to see where he's going. So, but yeah.
Nice. Hollywood. I just figured, what, round 2 came around. Roger McCreary out of goes to your Tennessee Titans out of Auburn. I mean, he
come on, Hollywood.
He led the SEC.
He's no longer a division. He's no longer a rival. He's playing for your team now. You gotta.
Oh, he's a good player. Good player.
He's not part of Auburn anymore. He's a Titan now. He's not part of Auburn anymore. You gotta strip that away, as tough as it can be.
No, I don't have any problem with the player.
Okay.
And that's what I was going to say. You should be happy. I think, I don't know if he immediately steps in, and if he's more of a, I don't know where he would play, immediately. I don't know if he will.
Well, Tennessee. He's not a need.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, nice to have, I guess.
Caleb Farley, and you drafted Christian Fulton and Chris Jackson, and you've drafted a number of players over the last 2-3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and you come back and draft another one. Now, you can never have too many defensive backs, of course, but that high, I mean, that's
what I was going to ask.
Are you not happy with what you got? Or are you admitting that you know they're not what you thought they would be or something? And we just had bigger needs, especially with the trade of AJ going away and need a tight end. You just had too many. You needed offensive linemen. There was more needs, more pressing needs than cornerback.
Yeah.
And I think this was a deeper class. You could have got a cornerback a little later and still did okay. That was my problem with the McCreary pick. As far as he is, I like him. He's a good kid, good defender, can do a little bit of everything for you at corner. So I see why they would like him, but I just didn't think he was a need.
Let's go a couple picks past that and look at the Houston Texans again addressing defense. They took Jaylen Petrie out of Baylor, who honestly, you know, he played a lot of slot. He played a lot of in the box as a safety. He has a knock, is that he's a bit undersized, sub 200-pound box safety, which is a little concerning according to what the the experts will say. But 195 tackles, 36 for a loss, 8 sacks, 4 interceptions, and 10 passes defensed. Do you think he could, see day one snaps? Are you buying it all?
Possibly, because that team is so deprived of talent. It very well could happen. They got their corner early. So now they come back and get a safety, right? So if you're playing that cover 2, you're wanting that type of safety back there, and you're believing in the corner just slipped my mind. They drafted at 3. Stingley, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So you've presumably got your shutdown corner, which you want in Levy's cover 2, safety back there on the back end. So, I mean, like I said, with the talent or lack of talent that they have, yeah, I could see him getting some quality starts, snaps, and even starting a lot of games for him. Just depends on what Levy wants to do. Does he want to go veteran with proven guys, or does he just want to kind of bite the bullet and get these guys on the field? Because either way, they're going to kind of stink, right? So he's got to do something to turn it around.
I feel better with Petrie's path now especially with Reed gone.
Yeah.
So the other guys, Murray, and I don't even know the other guy. Those are like Jags. So, where's Petrie's average draft position?
Petrie, and yes, Sean, Elijah Molden was the other corner for Tennessee. Petrie, he is. Hang on, let me find him here. I've got them in order. I just have to. Okay, so for context here, Daxton Hill's going at 56.8.
Okay.
Petrie is going at 69.3.
So he's going way past Cine.
Oh, yeah. Almost double round, probably 36-something picks later.
So,
which is what, maybe 2 rounds or so?
Yeah,
later.
And I think with Petrie, I think he has a better path not only to both snaps, but I think to playing playing closer to the line of scrimmage, because that's kind of what he did at Baylor. I think he played 122 box and just over, I want to say 600 slot snaps. So they're going to kind of move him, I think, over a little bit more. So I'm a tackle guy over. I think they're a little bit more sticky than the bigger plays. So those are the guys that I key in on. I like to play those guys that are going to play close to the line of scrimmage. So not to say Lewisine can't get that, but I see it a little bit more out of Petrie, and that's still not.
And he was a former linebacker at Baylor too. He started out as a linebacker there. So
yep.
Yeah, his RAS was an 8.47. I mean, he ran a 4.46 40 with a 2.57 20, and a 4.18 shuttle with a 6.74 3 cone. So I mean, athleticism is absolutely there. There's a chance, like we said, that they take that sub 200-pound size, and they worry about that. Maybe does that lead to injury potential? Sure. It just also tells me that for 195 tackles over that, granted it was a redshirt type, 5-year stint at Baylor, that means he's not afraid to get messy when need be, and I will take that type of player all day, every day. Personally, my 2 cents. The next
plays bigger than his actual size.
Yes, exactly. That was supposed to be Jorge's line. Jorge, in that seems like something that you and Booger would have mentioned.
Is my nickname on the show going to be Booger from now on? Is that where we're going?
Yes.
Revenge of the Nerds Booger, though.
That's awesome.
We need to get you the Booger Mobile.
Exactly.
You need to get the Booger Mobile for your studio there.
We'll combine the two. You're gonna be Booger. You're gonna be both Boogers. You're gonna wear the Who Farted T-shirt and catch the fly with the chopsticks, and then be on the Booger Mobile and say Yogi Berra style superlatives and
Love
everything. It. Perfect. I can't wait till episode 5 of the show when we have all these new characters and Art Anderson and Tully Blanchard. It's gonna be something.
Oh sure.
Picks 207 and 210 were 2 more solid corners, and Kyler Gordon and Andrew Booth going to the Bears and the Vikings. Again, beating a dead horse. Anybody really stand out amongst those lists? Can we move on to the next safety?
I don't mind Kyler Gordon if he wins the slot role. Something about that slot role in Chicago. I don't know. I think if he wins that role, I think he has a good path to snaps, and something just sticks out there.
Yeah. Right. And we've seen there's no doubt a slot corner, i.e. Kenny Moore, even Elijah Molden at times last year, can be defensive, DB1 upside on a week-to-week basis. Granted, it's a gamble, but it's possible. Yep. Let's move on, because something tells me that
Booth won't be bad in Minnesota opposite Patrick Peterson either. He'll be all right.
No, Minnesota definitely needed to they addressed their defensive side of the ball, and not that they made improvements. I like Minnesota's defense this year. I think they're going to be a sneaky good source of actual fantasy relevance in true defense scoring, especially when they get to play the Bears twice and the Lions, who shouldn't be high-scoring offenses. So that'd be interesting to pay attention to. Maybe a sneaky late defense. Look at that. See the way we did that? We went from IDP to real defense talking. We are multifaceted.
Look at us.
I know. We wear multiple different hats. See the way I did that?
Like I did. Yeah.
Jaquan Brisker, Chicago Bears, out of Penn State, went at 216. Mike, I'm going to say, I think he's an immediate starter in Chicago. I think he should be on our IDP radar. Tell me I'm crazy, or do you agree?
Nope. And Hollywood, where is Brisker's?
I knew you was going to ask. I had it ready.
The guy, yep.
So, he was the third safety off the board behind Hamilton and Seen, and he's going at an average of 42.7.
So would you say that's a 40? So would you say that's like right around third, fourth? Is that around third, fourth round?
Now these leagues, there's all types of sizes of leagues, so in all different scoring formats or whatever. I'm just jumbling together to get an average. In my head, I'm saying on average 14. So you're looking at what, 14, 28, 42 in the third round. So that's kind of my idea. He's starting that or right at the tail end of the third is where he looks like he's being taken.
Yep. That's and again, if he's going after Seen, then I'm good with that too. That's kind of the guy that I'm targeting. As my if I'm in a need if I'm needing a DB, he's the guy I'm targeting. I think he gets in a good spot. Eddie Jackson is a good deep safety. They don't have anybody that can play up front and be physical. Really solid year with the Lions. I mean, he played the box role. He can also do the ball hawk role when asked. I think he had like a 47 QB rating. He allowed a 47 QB rating, but again, really good run defender, played up on the slot, played up in the box. And what I also like is that I could see him being played up front more. Chicago didn't really address the linebacker position all that much. I think it's still just Roquan, and I know they have Nicholas Morrow, and then they've got a bunch of Jags behind him. So he doesn't miss on very many tackles. I think he missed on 10 last year, so that was a little bit of an issue, but still not horrible compared to some of the other missed tackle numbers I saw at the safety position. I think he only had 8 misses in his previous 2 seasons. So he's a wall. And I think he's a good physical safety who I think fits that mold in Chicago. Physical, you can do the box slot. And that's kind of the guy that I'm targeting.
Yeah.
And to add a little bit on Brisker, he was 5th in the Big Ten in tackles for a loss with 5.5, second team all Big Ten, and in coverage, he only allowed for his career 1 touchdown in almost 1,000 career coverage snaps. So
Wow.
we don't talk much about his coverage potential because he's been asked to play more in the box, but maybe, just maybe, that ability will keep you on the field because what do we always say, Jorge?
When you're on the field, that's where you get your points.
Boom, dynamite. Now we need the dynamite button where it blows up and goes.
You need the soundbite from Major League Dynamite. Drop in, Monty.
Exactly, which is actually what started all this, because that's where I got not the best color man in the business for nothing. Dynamite drop it. I liked it. We went from the other guys to Major League.
We got to work at another guy's reference though before the show's over because we have a good streak going at some point. I'm not trying to force it.
No, you're not trying to force anything. You're just saying do it before in the next 13 minutes.
Here you go.
I think that was on last weekend, and I always still laugh when Wahlberg just looks up to Farrell and goes, "It wasn't even an awning in their direction."
So
funny stories.
Last weekend we had a trivia night, and one of the questions was the categories was sports nicknames, and the nickname was the Yankee Clipper, and I wrote down I said out loud Mark Wahlberg, and like 3 people turned and looked, and they got it. No one else did. So those random strangers that I don't know, if you're listening, thank you for understanding my joke, and it was so worth it. It pretty much made my entire evening, and I got that question wrong because I went back and forth between Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio. It was stupid. Doesn't matter.
And whoever did the writing for Will Ferrell was like brilliant, because then he delivered his lines perfect.
Yes.
Like, hey, America needs a hero. Does it? How about 9 million socially conscious citizens just standing up and doing their part?
I don't know if there's a better little like a 2-minute spiel than the tuna and the lion. I think we all know that is probably the best. At least one of my favorite little pieces of that movie. 2 other guys speaking of the other guys, 2 other guys drafted. Alante Taylor, Hollywood, you know a lot about him. Went to the University of Tennessee. And Cam Taylor-Britt out of Nebraska. New Orleans and Cincinnati both, again, take a couple more depth pieces at defensive back. Cincinnati probably has more need than – actually, they both really do. But dead horse, any relevancy, any player evaluation, anything anybody wants to say about either of these 2?
I think they're both pretty good corners. I don't know how fantasy relevant they'll be. NFL-wise, they're definitely a help for both teams. We'll probably see some fairly amount of good playing time, I'd imagine. So, it all comes down to the reps, right? How many reps they're seeing and kind of what role they're in. So, nobody that I'm particularly chasing down, to draft. But
I do have a question for both of them, and unfortunately we won't be able to get them on the air, but I do have a question about them. When was their last desk pop?
Oh, probably Alante. Let's see. Had been last week, you would think, right? I mean, Jorge, when was your last one?
Never had a desk pop. Should this be my first one?
It should.
My wife would appreciate the bullet hole in the. Yeah, now I dropped the ball on that reference. My bad. Sorry about that.
It's all right. If you actually had a gun next to you, I would probably be a little more concerned and worried. But at the same time, always protect
Hollywood
yourself.
has to have. He had his last dust pop last weekend.
Yeah, right after you called him out, made him feel terrible.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike.
That's not where I was going.
Shot up
Way to be a jerk.
the
That's not where I was even
CJ2K
going.
jersey in the back.
Jeez.
Yeah.
This is when we need the hook on the wrap it up segment on the Academy Awards.
Wrap it up.
We're getting close to wrapping it up at the near the end of the second round. My Kansas City Chiefs took Brian Cook out of Cincinnati, and Jorge, I was sobbing uncontrollably when Daniel Sorensen left town.
Oh, sure.
Not exactly thrilled Tyrann Mathieu gone because that was key, to the defense.
Wasn't
but Brian
the
Cook,
sheriff in Kansas City?
pardon me,
Wasn't he called the sheriff? Wasn't
the
his-
landlord,
The landlord.
the
That's
landlord of the defense, and he's out, but that's okay. You have new landlords. At some point, Brian Cook could take that role. He just needs to jump Juan Thornhill at that point. What are your thoughts on Brian Cook?
So
with the Chiefs?
it's funny that you mentioned Thornhill because I was looking over at our lads, and so they currently have Thornhill as free, and of course they brought in Justin Reed this past year to go along as strong, and he's behind Justin Reed on the depth chart as we currently stand. I want to bring your attention to numbers. They're both missed tackle percentages, missed tackle rates. 28.6 Justin Reed's last year with the Texans, and this is supposed
missed
to
tackle
be,
rate 28.6.
Yeah.
Holy mother.
In college, Brian Cook's 7.2 at Cincinnati. Yeah, you tell me, is Justin Reed holding on to this spot going forward? I don't know. I think Cook's great tackling, strong safety. By comparison, I guess if we're going to go with that route, I think he could definitely. He has the upside here. Justin Reed, I believe, came in for Matthew. Matthew was a strong safety last year, I believe, in Kansas City.
But with Spags, he's plays all over. That's the night. That's why I like Cook, because Cook played 306 snaps in the box last year, 167 at corner or slot corner at least, and 236 deep. So I think he fills more the Matthew role than any of the incumbents that we have in tow.
But the question is, you mentioned skipping over Thornhill. Well, who are they going to, replace eventually on the other side? Because Reed's not a long-term solution for Kansas City, I think.
Yeah, I wish I had that answer. I think that.
So here's your little nugget. We were talking about Petrie. Here's a little nugget for you on Cook. Petrie was drafted at 69.3 so far.
Okay.
Cook is being drafted ahead of him at 67.7.
I mean, Brian, going in, I had seen Cook mentioned amongst the, the landing spot darlings that if he landed with the right team, he has an opportunity. And I mean, we've seen, as bad as Sorensen's been, despite, in real football, Spags had put him in a spot to at least succeed and give us some of those huge week to week. So maybe opportunity plus not being a shitbag like Sorensen was might actually help his ceiling or his floor.
So I meant to mention this earlier, and I probably really should have, and that is Daniel Sorensen's actually going to be a guest on a podcast in a couple weeks. So I'm totally shitting it. That's not it wasn't before. It sure as hell's not in now. So there we go.
Sorry. Oh well,
you don't know how much I wish that was true, Jorge.
He would whoop my ass. You know that? It would be ugly.
That'd be the equivalent of you getting Andrew Sendejo on the pod for me, because Sendejo is my Daniel Sorensen.
So I will contact both on their respective social media accounts and see how.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Well, if anything, Sorensen will miss your DM because he misses everything else on the field, so it won't.
Bazinga!
Bazinga! It is. We're on to the third round. Jorge, I'm gonna jump back to you. I got a lot of the good ones, man. You keep
I
buttering
didn't
it up.
get one here, and I mean that not because it's not a great question. It's he's literally not a good one. Continue.
Yeah. JT Woods, drafted by the Chargers at 315. Third round, 15th pick, by the way, not 315 overall, out of Baylor. At the end of the season, Nassir Adderley will be a free agent. JT Woods, dynasty stash, or do you think there's a chance you see snaps this year?
I think he is a huge developmental prospect that's going to need a lot of time to get used to the pros. High missed tackle rate, graded out poorly at Baylor in the Big 12. In coverage, he's allowing a 67.7% completion percentage. He does play in coverage a little bit better than he does in man. And he allows an NFL passer rating of 65.7, which that's pretty damn good. I'll not completely shut the bag on him completely, but to say that he's somebody that I'm investing a draft pick in, and that's not happening at all. So they need
other than the play, Mrs. Lincoln. Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the play?
Exactly. Well, he had his shots here and there in college, but he wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. So.
Oh, I don't know if that's he had his shots was a Abraham Lincoln joke. If that's the case, too soon.
Too soon. Yeah, it's only been 400 years.
Too soon. I'm sorry.
What might be too soon is if you're a Colts fan and you see the pending free agent Kari Willis depart. But did they draft his replacement in Nick Cross out of Maryland, Mike? Go Terps for you, Jorge. Sorry.
It's looking that way. Cross, actually has a lot of range. And it's pretty obvious. You could see a good football player on the field. Although he played the majority of his snaps deep, he actually graded better as a box safety. He had a 74 grade as a box safety compared to a 60 as a deep. But he can play that patrol deep hawk part of the field. So I think he can kind of play, maybe all over. He has kind of a physical presence. I think he just needs some discipline. And I think as, if he's coached up, I think he's on a defense with some pretty good vets that he can learn from. So I think he's got good speed, good quickness. He brings it as a tackler, which is exactly what you want out of a safety. Tackle rate, missed tackle rate, little, but a lot of these young kids, that's pretty much what they are. Hopefully they'll learn to wrap or learn to make the tackle. I think he was at about a 15.6 tackle rate, missed tackle rate. So, but I have a little bit. I'm a little bit more. I have a little bit more confidence. I think I like Cross over someone, and I guess we're just going to crap on Lewis Cine today because I like him.
I like Lewis Cine,
so
get Lewis Cine on here. That's okay. You have. That's the good part about this is we all hope we're wrong. We don't want to see these people fail. We want to see. I think that the more this is Mike's attempt to just basically drop down the value of Lewis Cine in all rookie IDP leagues. And so then he's going to get him in at pick 48 and pounce and take advantage.
No, you will. I will not have him. I will
not even if he's on fire.
Now I'm not drafting him out of spite.
Lewis Cine jersey giveaway at the Expo. You heard it here first. So what I heard you say is Nick Cross is the next Bob Sanders. That is on Mike now. Everybody heard that here first. Bob Sanders will be Nick Cross. Nick Cross will be Bob Sanders. Who will Kirby Joseph be, Hollywood? Just a one-year starter at Illinois. Long-term upside. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's some upside there with him. 1 year starter is a concern. Not a bad year, 57 tackles, 41 solos. So he did have 5 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries. So he played, he was playing under Lovie Smith last year. So he's got some NFL tutelage going on. He kind of, in that aspect, I think he's kind of ahead of the game a little bit. And then Detroit, they need players, right? So I don't know exactly where he fits in. I don't know that I would expect a lot out of him as a rookie. Maybe if he can find his way, he can maybe get into some kind of rotational role or something like that. But right away, no, I don't think he's going to do fantasy-wise. He's not going to be anything that you should be worried with right now.
Don't think so necessarily either. But you know what? Here, he had a 90.8 grade with this, which is like the second highest among Power 5 safeties. Granted, again, like we said, he's really only been done it for 1 year. But pretty much for the first 3 rounds wraps up all of the defensive backs taken where we would have them. As before we depart, is there anybody that you guys have after the 3rd round that really stands out that you think is IDP relevant in either redraft and or dynasty? Mike, starting with you. Anybody you have find?
I think in dynasty, both something about Reed Blankenship. I hope he makes it. I don't know what it is about him, but I hope he makes it. I know he signed on with the Eagles as an undrafted free agent.
He's a
really good box player also. But yeah, I hope he makes it. And then just for the name, come on, Smoke Monday has to play, right?
Yeah.
Come on. 4-year player, showed improvement throughout all of his 4 years. Good box player, really good solo tackler. It's not going to get you not many interceptions, but I think again is kind of could be one of those prototypical safeties. He can let him run downhill. He can play the single high, let him run downhill. Good hitter, cover ground. So I kind of hope he is another one who makes it.
Nice. Hollywood, anybody to add?
One that I would keep an eye on is, and we kind of mentioned it earlier, Tyson Anderson, the other safety that Cincinnati drafted. Mm-hmm. This whole Jesse Bates thing is could get interesting to say the least. So, and I think he's, if there's a possibility for both of them, like we said, Von Bell's he's not getting any younger, right? So he may be out pretty soon as well. And if Bates doesn't sign his tender or the tag, so he could be gone. They could trade him. Who knows what's going to happen? But for a long shot, I think Tyson Anderson is worth a stash if you got room on a taxi squad.
Finally, Jorge.
No, I do not have it.
That's okay. Is not a bad thing because the hit rate for safeties going in from the 4th round on is pretty low. I mean, you have to really at this point you're kind of just speculating and or you're taking like these guys. I mean, they stole all the ones you were going to talk about. I know. So clearly, I don't know half these people either. Don't let me fool you. I'm supposed to be the hostess with the mostest, but
the DB position is really one of the tougher ones to evaluate just because they've got so many different roles. They have so many different assignments. You don't know where someone is supposed to be at some point. And then it really is. It's a tough position to evaluate. And that's why it's every year there's always a new DB that comes out of nowhere to score high, or there's just so much turnover. And that's
what Cameron Curl was a 7th round pick. Is that right?
No.
6th, 7th round pick,
somewhere around there.
Where he's at.
There's so much DB turnover when it comes to scoring. It's a very volatile position.
And let's forget, a lot of leagues don't break down into true positions of cornerback or safety. And so it's difficult to really narrow down, especially for the DB only leagues. But there's some talent out there. You just got to dig deeper, and that's what we're going to do.
Well, clearly we will keep everyone afloat of everything as the season goes on. Next week, I will not be here, but these three will, in addition to some of our other good friends who will be doing a Dynasty mock draft. Is it Dynasty or is it just regular?
Dynasty rookie draft
Okay.
for IDP, and so we're gonna have some guys over from Gridiron Ratings. We're gonna have Ronnie and Jeff joining us, so it's gonna be a good time, and we're gonna do it a little bit differently than other rookie drafts that you may have seen or mock drafts. We're gonna make it situational dependent, so we're not just gonna go off of our rankings. We're gonna assign a certain situation. Oh, you're weak at this position or that position. What's your strategy going to be? So that we can help give you also a little bit more insight into how you should be thinking about approaching your draft as we're drafting.
Perfect. My first situation I'm going to give is Mike is in an NFC North only league, and all safeties are already taken except for Lewis Cine, and he has to take them or take 2 Hornet Stings to the nuts.
Oh,
Tune in next week as we discuss his options. And you should always mark your Hornet box with a giant H if you watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. A little reference for everybody out there for that one. So for Nate, for Jorge, for Mike, and Hollywood, this is Shoot the Gap. Please comment, leak, subscribe, and check out all of our work. Take care.